Good evening, traders. How was your weekend? Hope your weekend went well. Hope it was good and hope you were able to backtest your strategy. Hope you're able to also check your winning trades and your losing trade. Welcome to another weekly analysis for the index of currency pairs that we trade in the forex market. 7 of them. Um, let's start with the euro. And let's see what we have for the weekly time frame. For the monthly time frame, I only check the monthly time frame maybe at the beginning of the month and at the end of the month. But most times I start my analysis from the weekly time frame. Now, the weekly time frame, let's not forget that is sitting upon this demand zone, so we're likely to see a push to the downside before moving towards the upside. Now that's for the weekly. Now if we move downwards to the daily, what can we see for the daily? Now you notice that on the daily we have been able to make this lower low, then a liquidity tap. So I'm still expecting more of price coming down to this demand zone. Okay, we've just been able to tap into another demand zone here. So we are likely to see price moving to the upside, maybe to reject on this supply zone. Now if we go to, let's check some other time frame to see how price has been acting. We're moving down so far, so we expect a movement to the upside. If this supply zone we hold, then we may see more movement to the downside. But if the supply zone will not hold, then we expect that price will break the supply zone to this particular region. But if the supply zone will hold, then we would expect that price will fall from this particular point, this particular dot, and fall to the downside to close all previous order that have been set there. So that's that for the euro. But before we go out of the euro, let's see what the 4-hour is telling us. Now 4-hour is also telling us similar thing. We can see now on the 4-hour that we are expecting that price would come and go to this supply zone before falling to the downside. Possibly this supply zone may not hold, so we may see a break to the upside. It is very much possible. Today, okay, let's see what the big boys are doing when it comes to the euro. So if you look at the last event, looking at the COT data, you will see that they are closing more of short than they are closing more of long. So that means they are making a advancement so that the euro might be able to go up. So I would not be surprised to see the euro coming up maybe before falling, but we expect some reactions here, and if possible we may break it to this side. Now let's quickly move to the next. Now the next one we'll be talking about is the dollar. Let's check on the weekly. Now we are still within this range so far, and we're expecting price to come to this supply zone before we see any reaction to the downside. Now if we go to the daily, what can we find on the daily? Now on the daily, we'll see that we just rejected off an important block, but price have not gotten there fully. Now on the, let's check what we have on the 6 hours. Now we expect that price is sitting very close to, is sitting on this supply zone. So we may expect that price will fall to the downside, maybe to this demand zone, before we continue a movement to the upside. So we're expecting maybe we'll form something like this, then something like this. before that continuation. But we may also fall to the downside because we have equal lows here coming to tap liquidity. Now let's check what we have on the 4-hour. Now the 4-hour also have the same similar thing, but this time this block is a good one possibly, and we may also react at this particular demand zone here. So this is another possible point whereby we can move up from. Despite the fact that the banks are opening more positions for the dollar, that doesn't mean that we cannot go downwards when we consider the dollar. Okay, now let's go to GBP. We're going to be fast about our currency pair analysis today. Let's go to the GBP. Now, what can we see so far on the weekly? On the weekly so far, we are still sitting very close to this range on this point. We've been there for weeks now, so let's quickly see what the daily can do for us. Not forgetting the fact that we broke structure here to the upside, and this is just more like a retracement of the daily, and we've left a demand zone, but we still have some on closed order here, likely because we've not tapped into this place. So I will not be surprised to see if price will tap into this place at the long run, but let's see what our 8-hour is telling us. Now, we've been trending downward so far, and we broke structure to the upside. So I will not be surprised to see a little movement to the downside, maybe to this demand zone. Then we can continue our movement to the upside. So we may see a fall like this, then we continue our movement to the upside. Now let's see what the 4-hour is telling us. Now, if you look at the 4-hour carefully, we see that we just made higher high, higher low. So we're expecting higher high, but we still have some gap that are yet to be filled. So we may likely obey this demand zone before moving to the upside. We likely obey that demand zone before moving to the upside. Now let's quickly move to the next pair, CHF. Now what do we have for the Swiss franc on the weekly? Now we can see that we've been trending downwards from this particular place, but we've also left this demand zone. We left this demand zone, so we are expecting more movement to the upside, and we also respected this demand zone. So let's see what the daily is talking about. Now the daily is sitting on very important demand zone, so we may expect some movement to the upside. But if we take a look at the 12 hours, 8 hours, now you can see that we've been trending downwards. So at this point, I will not be surprised to see price make a higher low to this particular point. Then if possible, we'll reject on this supply zone, then move downwards. Let's quickly check what the file is saying. Yeah, similar thing is bound to happen there, then we can move downwards. But if we break this particular supply zone, then we should see price moving to the upside. Now let's move to the next pair, JPY. Now if you look at the weekly on JPY on the yuan, what can we see? Now we'll notice that on the yuan, we've been making retracement to the upside on the weekly. Now on the daily, can we see the same thing? Yes, we can. Because we've been moving to the upside, we've been able to reject this particular demand zone. Then we are moving to the upside. Now on the 8 hours, what can we see? Now we can see that price is sitting carefully on a supply zone at this region. So if the supply zone will hold, we may see some little fall of the JPY. But if the supply zone won't work, then we would expect that JPY will move to the upside. Now let's quickly check the 4-hour. Now the 4-hour and the 6 hours, they are showing the same thing. So we expect the same thing. just that we might expect a reaction here, or we expect this demand zone to hold before we move to the upside. Now let's move to CAD. Now if we look at the Canadian dollar, what can we see so far on the weekly time frame? Now if you look at the Canadian dollar on the weekly time frame, we'll notice that we've just been sitting on this retracement of this impulsive move, and on the daily we'll notice that we've been trending to the downside, and we just got to this crucial point which happens to be a demand zone. But let's see what the 8 hours is telling us. Now so far the 8 hours is telling us that we are yet to tap into this demand zone, so we are likely to see that price will tap into this demand zone, so price may fall to this downside and move upwards. But if you look at the 4 hours so far, what can we see? Now so far on the 4 hour, we can see that we've been able to get to this demand zone, and after getting to demand zone, what can we expect? Now we can expect more further movement to the upside. Now that is what we have so far for the card for this week. Now let's quickly check the Australian dollar. What do we have for the Australian dollar? Now coming to the weekly, we can see that we've just rejected an important block on the weekly supply zone. And also if you look at the daily, we can see that we've broken structure to the upside. So this is more like a retracement, and we expect price to get to hopefully this place then before moving to the upside, but that is for the daily. Now let's see what the 8 hour is telling us. Now so far we've been trending to the downside, so we may come downwards before moving upwards, downwards before moving upwards, downwards, and we move up from there. But let's see what the FAR is saying. Now the FAR is saying exactly the same thing. Sorry about that. But let's see what the 4 hour is saying. Now 4 hour, we expect that price will come to this supply zone before rejecting on this supply zone. Now if the supply zone will not hold, then we'll break to the upside, but I expect that the supply zone will definitely hold. Now let us check the last pair for today, which is NZD. Now if you look at the NZD, let's go to the weekly quickly. We are still sitting on this particular block so far. We are still sitting on this particular block so far, and we expect rejection to the downside, and we can see that that rejection is already happening. Now if you look at this, this is a very crucial supply zone that price has reacted from. So where do we expect us to reverse from? Hopefully this particular point. We also have this particular point, or we also have this particular demand zone. So any of these is possible. Let's quickly check the 8 hours. Now the 8 hours is also in alignment with the daily, and let's check 4 hours. Now the 4 hours we made lower low, so we expect lower high, then lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, till we get to this particular demand zone. Now if you enjoy my analysis for the index of the forex pairs, please kindly click the subscribe button, share with your friends, and also invite your friends so that they can like this page, so that it can be ranked properly for algorithm purposes. Thank you very much, and make sure you have a blissful trading week.